A maid's toddler miracle woke the billionaire daughter. What happened next shocked everyone. The Harrington mansion sat at the top of Maple Hill like a crown nobody wanted to wear anymore. It had 12 bedrooms, 7 bathrooms, a swimming pool that nobody swam in, a garden that nobody walked through, and a kitchen that smelled like money, but never like home. From the outside, people driving past would slow down and stare. They would point and whisper about how lucky the people inside must be. They would imagine laughter echoing through those tall windows. They would imagine a family eating dinner together, smiling, passing the bread, asking each other about their day. But the people driving past were wrong. Inside the Harrington mansion, there was mostly silence. Elena Harrington was 34 years old, and she was what newspapers called one of the most powerful women in America. She ran Harrington Industries, a company her father had built, and she had grown into something even bigger. She worked 16 hours a day. She wore suits that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her hair was always perfect. Her makeup was always perfect. Her posture was always perfect. But her eyes were empty. They had been empty for 2 years now, ever since the accident. Her daughter, Lily, was 4 years old, and she had not spoken a single word in almost 2 years. The doctors had a name for it. Selective mutism triggered by acute childhood trauma. Big words that meant one simple, heartbreaking thing. Lily had seen something so terrible that her little heart had shut her voice away somewhere deep inside, somewhere safe, somewhere nobody could reach it. The accident had taken Elena's husband, Daniel. A car crash on a rainy Tuesday night. Lily had been in the back seat. She had survived without a scratch on her body. But something inside her had broken in a way that no doctor, no therapist, no amount of money could fix. Elena had tried everything. The best child psychiatrists in New York, a specialist in London, a therapy center in Switzerland, art therapy, music therapy, play therapy, water therapy. She had spent close to $2 million trying to bring her daughter's voice back. Every single morning, she woke up hoping that today would be the day. Every single night, she went to bed with her heart a little more cracked than it was the morning before. Lily moved through the mansion like a small ghost. She had her father's brown eyes and her mother's dark hair. She was beautiful in the way that sad things are sometimes beautiful. She carried a worn stuffed rabbit everywhere she went, a rabbit her father had given her on her 2nd birthday, before everything changed. She would sit by the window for hours, watching the birds outside. She would draw pictures that were always the same: a house, a tree, a sun, and 3 stick figures. A family. Her family. The one that used to exist. The nannies didn't last long. The first one left after 3 weeks because the silence made her uncomfortable. The second one was caught on her phone more than she was watching Lily. The third one cried every day, and Elena felt too guilty to keep her. By the time spring arrived, Elena was desperate in a way she had never been desperate before. She could close a $1 billion deal without blinking. She could walk into a boardroom of men twice her age and make them listen. But she could not find someone to care for her silent little girl in a way that felt right. And then Margaret from the staffing agency called. "I have someone," Margaret said. "She's not what you're used to. Her English is perfect, don't worry about that. She's American, actually from Tennessee originally. But she's different from the others. Her name is Rosa. Rosa Mendez. She's 26, she has excellent references, and she's hardworking beyond anything I've seen in 20 years of this business." Elena pressed the phone between her ear and her shoulder and kept signing papers. "What's the catch?" Margaret was quiet for just a second too long. "She has a son," Margaret said carefully. "He's 3 years old. His name is Marco. She's a single mother, and the arrangement would need to include him being with her during work hours. I know that's not standard, and I completely understand if—" "Send her tomorrow," Elena said. Margaret blinked on the other end of the line. "Really? Just like that?" "Lily needs someone real," Elena said quietly, and something in her voice cracked just slightly, just at the edges. like ice in early spring. Maybe a child in the house is exactly what real looks like. She hung up before she could change her mind. That night, Elena stood in the doorway of Lily's bedroom for a long time. Lily was asleep, curled around her stuffed rabbit, her little chest rising and falling in the soft blue light of the night lamp. Elena walked over slowly and sat on the edge of the bed. She reached out and pushed a strand of dark hair away from Lily's face. "Something's coming tomorrow, baby girl," she whispered. "I don't know if it'll help. I don't know anything anymore. But I'm not going to stop trying. You hear me? Mama is never going to stop trying." Lily didn't wake up, but her little hand, in her sleep, reached out and found Elena's fingers and held them. Elena sat there in the dark and cried without making a sound, because that was how she had learned to do everything in this house. Quietly, alone, with a brave face that nobody was even awake to see. Rosa Mendez showed up at 7:45 in the morning, 15 minutes early, which Elena would later learn was simply who Rosa was, someone who showed up early, stayed late, and never once complained about either. She was not what Elena expected. Elena had pictured someone quiet and efficient, someone who would blend into the background of the mansion the way the furniture did. Someone professional and distant and easy to manage. Rosa was none of those things. She was small, barely 5'3", with dark curly hair pulled back in a loose ponytail that was already escaping in little spirals around her face. She wore clean jeans, a yellow blouse, and white sneakers. She carried a large tote bag on one shoulder and held her son Marco on her other hip, like he was the most natural thing in the world to be carrying. Marco was 3 years old, and he was extraordinary. He had his mother's curly hair and enormous dark eyes that seemed to take in everything all at once, like a little scientist examining the world for the first time and finding it absolutely wonderful. He had a small gap between his front teeth. He was wearing a dinosaur shirt, a green T-Rex on the front with the words, "Roar means I love you," printed underneath. He looked at the mansion with his mouth wide open. "Mama," he whispered loudly, the way toddlers always whisper, which is to say not quietly at all. "Mama, is this a castle?" Rosa shifted him on her hip and smiled apologetically at Elena. "I'm so sorry. He's never seen a house this big before." But Elena wasn't looking at Rosa. She was looking at Marco. And something strange was happening in her chest. Something warm was pressing against all the cold, empty places. "It's okay," Elena said, and her voice came out softer than she intended. She looked at Marco. "It's not a castle, but it does have a very big kitchen." Marco's eyes went even wider. "Do you have cookies?" Elena blinked. Nobody had asked her about cookies in a very long time. "I think we might have cookies, yes." "Okay," Marco said seriously, as if this settled everything. "I like it here." Rosa looked mortified. Elena almost smiled. Almost. They walked inside, and Rosa took in her surroundings with calm, careful eyes. She asked smart questions. She was organized. She had a folder with her references, her certifications in child first aid and CPR, and a handwritten letter from her previous employer that was so glowing it made Elena read it twice. She was clearly excellent at her work, but Elena kept watching Marco. Because Marco was doing something incredible. He had spotted the staircase, grand and curving and wide, and he had walked over to the bottom step and sat down on it as if he owned the place. He pulled a small toy car out of his pocket and started rolling it back and forth on the step, making soft engine sounds under his breath. He was completely comfortable, completely at home, as if the size of the house meant nothing to him, as if the silence of the house meant nothing to him. He just brought his own noise with him, his own light, his own warmth. And then Lily appeared. She came around the corner of the hallway in her pajamas, her stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm, her dark hair loose and messy from sleep. She stopped when she saw the strangers. Her eyes went immediately to her mother, checking, "Is this safe, Mama? Is this okay?" Elena gave her the small nod she always gave. It's okay, baby. I'm here. Lily stayed where she was. She didn't come closer. She never came closer, not anymore, not with new people. She would stand at the edge of rooms and watch from a distance, like a bird that had learned not to trust open hands. But Marco looked up from his toy car. And when he saw Lily, his whole face changed. It didn't show caution or confusion or the discomfort that adults sometimes showed around her silence. His face just showed one thing, the purest thing, simple, uncomplicated delight. The way only a 3-year-old can look at a brand new person. Like she was a gift. "Hi," he said cheerfully. "I'm Marco. I have a car." He held it up as evidence. Lily stared at him. Marco stared back, still smiling, completely unbothered by her silence. He patted the step next to him. "You can sit here if you want. I don't mind." Lily didn't move. Marco shrugged, the tiny shrug of someone who has absolutely no ego involved in the situation. He went back to rolling his car. "That's okay," he said to himself, perfectly content. "I'll just be here." Elena watched her daughter's face. She watched Lily's eyes follow that little red car back and forth, back and forth. She watched something flicker in Lily's expression, not quite a feeling, but the shadow of one, the memory of one. Like a candle lit in a window of a house that had been dark for a very long time. Lily took one small step forward, then stopped, then one more. Elena pressed her hand against her own mouth. Rosa, standing beside her, had gone very still. Neither of them breathed. Lily walked to the staircase. She sat down on the step next to Marco. 3 inches away from him, her rabbit clutched her chest, and she watched the little red car roll across the step. Marco glanced at her sideways. Then he held the car out. An offering. Simple as sunrise. Lily looked at it for a long moment. Then she reached out with one small hand and took it. Marco grinned his gap-toothed grin. "It goes really fast," he informed her. And Lily, for the first time in almost 2 years, almost smiled. It wasn't quite a smile. It was the edge of one. A comma where there had only ever been periods. But Elena saw it. And it broke her heart open in the best possible way. She turned away before anyone could see her cry. 3 weeks passed. Rosa and Marco arrived every morning at 7:45, always early, always bringing something warm with them. Marco's laughter, the smell of the pan dulce Rosa sometimes brought from the bakery near their apartment, the sound of little sneakers on marble floors. The mansion changed. Not dramatically. Not all at once. But the way seasons change slowly and then undeniably. Marco was 3 years old, and he had never once in his entire life understood why you would be quiet when you could be loud. He narrated everything he did. He made announcements. He asked questions, endless, bottomless, glorious questions that Rosa answered patiently every single time because she believed that a question from a child was a sacred thing. "Mama, why is the sky blue?" "Because the air breaks up the light, Mijo." "Why does it break it?" "That's just what air does." "Why?" "Because God made air curious, just like you."
Marco thought about that.
"Mama, am I made of air?" "You are made," Rosa said, kissing his curly head, "of the best things in the world." Lily watched all of this. She followed Marco at a distance of about 4 feet, which was exactly 4 feet closer than she had followed anyone in 2 years. She trailed him through the garden while he chased butterflies. She sat on the opposite end of the playroom while he crashed his toy cars into elaborate structures he built from blocks. She watched him eat his lunch with the concentrated attention of someone studying a foreign country she was thinking about visiting. Marco never pushed her. He never tried to make her talk. He never looked at her with the anxious, careful eyes that adults always used. Those eyes that said, "We know something is wrong with you, and we are trying very hard not to make it weird." Marco didn't know anything was wrong. He just knew she was Lily and she was his friend, and that was entirely enough for him. He talked enough for both of them, and he didn't mind at all. "Lily, look at this bug. Lily, this bug is so big. Lily, do you think the bug has a family?" I think the bug has a family. I think the bug's mama is somewhere worrying about him. Lily, should we help the bug go home? Lily would look at the bug. She would look at Marco. And sometimes, more and more often now, the corner of her mouth would lift. Just slightly. Just barely. But Rosa saw it every time. And Rosa would catch Elena's eye across the garden, and Elena would press her lips together and look away quickly, blinking hard. Rosa Mendez understood grief. She was not a stranger to it. She had lost her own mother 3 years ago, right before Marco was born. She had raised her son alone, working double shifts, sleeping 4 hours a night sometimes, loving Marco so hard that there was no room left in her exhaustion for self-pity. She knew what it felt like to carry something heavy and still have to show up. She knew what it felt like to smile at your child when you wanted to cry. She recognized it in Elena. She didn't say anything about it. It wasn't her place, and she knew that. But she saw it. The way Elena would stand in the kitchen doorway in the morning watching Lily and Marco, and the love on her face would be mixed with something that looked like guilt. Like she blamed herself for what had happened to Lily. Like she believed if she had just been in that car, if she had just...
Rosa understood that too.
The terrible mathematics of grief. The way your mind keeps running the same calculation over and over, changing one variable, looking for a different answer. What if? What if? What if? It was on a Thursday, 3 weeks and 2 days after Rosa started, that the first miracle happened. It was small. The big miracles always start small. Marco had built a tower out of blocks, the tallest tower he had ever managed, and he was standing back admiring it with his hands on his 3-year-old hips like a tiny architect. Lily, he said seriously, this is the best tower in the whole world. Maybe the whole universe. Lily was sitting cross-legged on the play mat 4 feet away, watching. Marco looked at her. Don't you think? Lily looked at the tower. She tilted her head slightly. Then she reached out and picked up one more block from the pile beside her. She held it out toward Marco. Marco looked at the block. His face filled with understanding. Oh, he breathed. You think it needs one more? He took the block carefully, climbed up on his knees, placed the block on the very top of the tower with the concentration of a surgeon. The tower held. Marco threw his arms in the air. We did it, Lily. We did it. And Lily, quiet, broken, voiceless Lily, clapped. Both hands. Together. 3 soft claps. Rosa was in the doorway.
She saw it.
She had to walk to the kitchen and grip the counter with both hands and take 6 deep breaths before she could function again. When she told Elena that evening, Elena sat completely still for almost 30 seconds. Then she said, in a voice barely above a whisper, she clapped. 3 times, Rosa said. Elena nodded. She pressed both hands flat on her desk. She nodded again, slowly, like she was processing something enormous. Okay, she said finally. Okay. It was the most Elena had ever said about her feelings. Rosa understood that too. It happened on a Friday night in late April, when the rain came down in silver sheets against the tall windows of the mansion. Rosa and Marco usually left by 6. But that evening, Rosa's car wouldn't start, a dead battery, of all things, on the worst possible night, and Elena told her without hesitating that they would stay. She had plenty of room. She practically had a whole empty wing. Rosa thanked her, quietly, and Elena waved it off in the brisk, efficient way she waved everything off. After dinner, Marco fell asleep on the living room couch wrapped in a soft blanket, his curly hair spread across the cushion, his mouth slightly open, his toy car still clutched in one hand. He fell asleep the way all deeply loved children fall asleep, completely, trustingly, with his whole small body at peace. Lily sat in the armchair across from him and watched him sleep. Rosa sat quietly on the far end of the couch. Elena stood at the window, looking at the rain. They stayed like that for a while. The rain. The sleeping boy. The silent child watching him. Then Elena said, "Does he always sleep like that?" "Like what?" Rosa asked softly. Like he hasn't got a single worry in the world. Rosa looked at her son. A smile moved across her face like light. Always. Even when things are hard. He just lets go at the end of the day. I used to wonder how he does it.
She paused.
I think it's because he knows he's loved. When you know that all the way down to your bones, you can let go. The words landed in the room like something heavy and soft at the same time. Elena kept looking at the rain. Lily used to sleep like that. Before. Rosa didn't say anything. Sometimes the best thing you can offer someone is just the space to keep talking. She used to run to me every morning, Elena said, very quietly. She would just launch herself off the bed the moment she woke up and come running down the hall. Her feet on the floor, I could hear them from my room. And she would burst through my door and jump on my bed and she would say, "Mama, Mama, Mama," just over and over, like it was the best word she knew. She stopped. Her voice was steady and controlled. She was working very hard to keep it that way. I would give everything I have to hear her say it one more time. Rosa felt tears press against the back of her eyes. I was in a meeting, Elena said. When Daniel took her to the doctor that evening. I was closing a deal. He texted me, heading out with Lily back by 7, and I didn't text back because I was in a meeting. She was quiet. I didn't text back. Elena. I know it's not my fault, Elena said, quick and tight. I know that. My therapist has told me. My sister has told me. I know it logically. But knowing something and feeling something are very different things. And every time I look at Lily and she can't, her voice cracked. Just slightly. The professional composure she wore like armor developed one small fracture. She used to talk so much. She had so much to say. She was always asking questions. She sounded exactly like Daniel when she got excited about something. And now this house is so quiet. And it's just us. And I don't know how to reach her. The rain pressed against the windows. And then something happened that neither woman expected. Lily climbed down from her armchair. She crossed the living room with her rabbit tucked under her arm. She walked past Rosa. She walked to her mother at the window. And she pressed herself against Elena's side and wrapped both arms around her waist and held on. Elena's breath caught so sharply it was almost a sound. She looked down at her daughter. Lily's eyes were closed. She was just holding on. Just being there. Just saying in the only language she had right now, "I know, Mama. I know. Me too." Elena wrapped her arms around her daughter and held her back. And she cried. Really cried, for the first time since the funeral. Not the quiet, private, soundless crying she had taught herself, but real crying, the kind that shakes you, the kind that means something is finally coming loose. Rosa quietly got up and left the room. She sat in the hallway outside the door and cried her own silent tears, listening to the rain, feeling something she could only call wholly moving through that house. When she went back in 20 minutes later, Elena and Lily were sitting together on the window seat, Lily curled into her mother's side, Elena's arm around her, both of them watching the rain. Neither of them said anything. But the silence between them was completely different now. It was the silence of two people who had finally found each other again. May came in warm and bright, and the garden at Harrington Mansion bloomed like it had been waiting for permission. Rosa started planting things with Marco near the back fence. Tomatoes, marigolds, herbs, and somehow Lily drifted into the garden too and stayed. She would sit in the dirt beside Marco, her rabbit set carefully to one side, and she would push seeds into the earth with one careful finger. Marco narrated the whole process with the passion of a nature documentary host. "This seed is going to be a tomato, Lily. A big red tomato. And we're going to eat it. That's kind of crazy, right? Right now it's just a tiny seed, and then it's going to be food. That's so cool." Elena started coming home earlier. Nobody made a big thing of it. She just started leaving the office at 5 instead of 7. Sometimes at 4:30. Once, on a Friday at 3. She told her assistant she was handling something important at home. which was true. The most important thing she had ever handled. She would sit in the garden and watch Marco and Lily plant things together, and she would feel the knot in her chest slowly, slowly unwinding. She started helping Rosa make dinner sometimes, standing at the counter beside her, chopping vegetables, learning recipes she had never had time to learn before. Marco would sit on the counter, Rosa pretended not to notice, and provide commentary on everything. One evening Marco looked at Elena very seriously and said, "You should smile more." Rosa closed her eyes in embarrassment. Elena looked at him. "Is that right?" "Yes," Marco said, with complete authority. "Because your smile is nice. Lily thinks so too. Right, Lily?" And every single person in that kitchen froze. Because Marco had turned to Lily. And he was looking at her with his big open face, the face that knew nothing about pressure or expectation, the face that was just asking a simple friendly question the way 3-year-olds ask everything, easily, without understanding that some questions are impossible. Lily was standing by the kitchen table. She was looking at Marco. She was looking at him with those deep brown eyes, her father's eyes, and something in them was moving, shifting, rising up from somewhere very far down. The kitchen was completely silent. Rosa gripped the counter. Elena stopped breathing. Marco waited, unworried, just curious, his head tilted sideways. And Lily opened her mouth. The sound that came out was small, thin as thread, rusty as a door that hasn't been opened in 2 years. Her lips were trembling. Her eyes filled with tears that spilled over immediately. But the word came. It came. Yes. One word. 4 letters. 1 syllable.
Yes.
Elena made a sound she had never made before in her life. It came from somewhere underneath language, underneath thought, from the deepest place a mother's heart has, a sound that was grief and relief and love and gratitude and joy so enormous it couldn't fit inside silence anymore. She crossed the kitchen in 3 steps and she knelt on the floor and she took her daughter's face in both hands. "Lily," she whispered. "Baby." Lily was crying, both hands pressed against her own cheeks, tears streaming freely, and she was looking at her mother with eyes that were terrified and relieved and so tired from carrying all that silence for so long. And then she took a shaking breath. And she said it, "Mama." The whole world stopped. Rosa was crying with her hands pressed over her mouth. Marco looked around at all the crying adults with wide eyes, and then his own lip began to wobble in sympathy, the way very kind children's lips do, because he could feel that something enormous was happening even if he didn't understand exactly what. Elena pulled her daughter against her chest and held her so tightly, so completely, with every piece of herself. Lily wrapped her arms around her mother's neck, and she held on just as hard. "Mama," she said again, into Elena's shoulder. Her voice was the voice of someone coming home after being lost in the dark for a very long time. Broken and small and absolutely, completely real.
"Mama."
"Mama." "I'm here." Elena wept. "Baby, I'm here. Mama's here. I've got you. I've got you." Marco slid off the counter and walked over. He put his small hand on Lily's back and patted it 3 times. "It's okay, Lily," he said seriously. "Mamas are the best people." "I know." Rosa laughed through her tears. It was the kind of laugh that lives right next to crying, the kind that happens when your heart is too full for any single emotion. In the weeks that followed, Lily's voice came back the way spring comes back after a hard winter, slowly at first, one small green thing at a time, then faster, then all at once and everywhere. She started with words, then phrases, then full sentences, quiet and careful, testing each one like stepping stones across a stream. Her voice was soft and a little raspy from long disuse, and Elena thought it was the most beautiful sound she had ever heard in her life, every single time, without exception. She started talking about her father. Slowly. Gently. With Elena sitting beside her in the evenings, listening with her whole heart. about how he smelled like coffee and wood shavings, about how he made funny voices when he read her bedtime stories, about how he called her his sunshine girl. Elena listened to all of it and cried and laughed and told her own stories, and slowly, together, they started building something from the wreckage. Not forgetting, not replacing, but carrying Daniel with them in the way that love can carry the people it has lost. Rosa and Marco became part of the family. Not in an official way, not at first, just in the way that some people walk into your life and fill spaces you didn't even know were empty. Marco's toys appeared in the garden. Rosa's cooking filled the kitchen with smells that made the mansion feel, for the first time, like a home. On Marco's 4th birthday, Elena threw him a party in the garden, the first real party the mansion had seen in years, with balloons and a dinosaur cake and Marco's 3 best friends from preschool running through the marigolds he and Lily had planted. Lily wore a yellow dress, and she talked all afternoon. She talked and talked and talked, asking questions, telling jokes she got slightly wrong, laughing at Marco's dinosaur impersonations, calling to Elena from across the garden, "Mama, look. Mama, come see." Elena came every time. She would never not come. That evening, after the guests had gone and Marco had fallen asleep in his usual total way, clutching a new toy dinosaur, Elena found Rosa sitting on the back porch steps watching the fireflies come out over the garden. She sat down beside her. They didn't speak for a while. The garden was soft and green in the fading light. The marigolds nodded in the evening breeze. From upstairs, very faintly, they could hear Lily singing to herself, just a little song, quiet and sweet, a song Elena hadn't heard in 2 years. "How do you thank someone," Elena said finally, "for something like this?" Rosa shook her head. "You don't thank me. Marco did this. He just loved her. That's all. He didn't know how to do anything else."
Elena thought about that.
"Maybe that's all it ever takes." Rosa smiled. "Maybe." The fireflies rose higher into the darkening sky. The little song drifted from the upstairs window. Somewhere inside, a 3-year-old boy slept with a dinosaur in his arms, having changed 2 lives without ever once trying to, simply by being exactly, entirely, beautifully himself. And the mansion on Maple Hill, for the first time in a very long time, was full. Not of silence. Not of money. Not of perfect furniture and empty rooms. But of something better. Something real. Of the sound of people healing each other. The end. Sometimes the smallest voice is the one that wakes the loudest silence. And sometimes it takes a child who knows nothing about broken things to show us that we were never beyond repair.